Hello and welcome to our programs webinar. We are kicking off this program webinar series just as the Checkoff gets all of our programs up and running, and we're really looking forward to sharing with all of our stakeholders and investors about the programs that Checkoff is engaged with. And so today I'm excited to share with you, and these esteemed panelists will share with you about the design summit that we did in Texas. I believe it was last March. And this is a continued program that we'll do again early 2025. And so the group is going to share that with you. My name is Alicia Hodges, and I'm the Checkoff Program Director. Today, I'm joined by Aaron Heidecker from Clutch, Don Rogers from Arizona Masonry Council, Tony Topping from Texas Masonry Council, and Dr. Gregory Lujan, the Department Head of Architecture at Texas A&M. And in just a minute, I am going to turn it over to this team here to share a little bit about their program. I did want to formally read their bios to you because they've done some impressive work. And so I'm going to go through that, and then I will turn it over to them. I did want to remind you all that we are being recorded. This webinar is being recorded, so we can post it online to our Checkoff website and email it out. And we're also in webinar style format. And so your cameras are off, your microphones are muted, but you can certainly stay engaged in the chat. And if you could put your questions in the Q&A, otherwise they might get lost in the chat. We'll try to answer those along the way. Tony said he's good with fielding questions along the way, so we'll throw him some questions. I would like to read everybody's bios, though, for you. So I'll start with Dr. Gregory Lujan, a fellow in AIA, is the Ward V. Wells Endowed Professor of Architecture and the Department Head at Texas A&M University. Dr. Lujan is a nationally recognized award-winning architect, scholar, author, professor, and academic leader whose work investigates how design, emerging digital technologies, critical theory, pedagogy, practice, and academic industry partnerships intersect. He co-founded the Global Studio as an interdisciplinary forum for students to learn from international contexts through the interdisciplinary interactions and produce transformative outcomes in the United States. The NSF NEA DOE Graham Foundation and Robert Woods Johnson Foundation fund his research. His computational design expertise leads to the digital manufacturing of resilient design, build projects, and full-scale assembly applications. The International Foundation of the Centre Canadien d'Architecture used his virtual models in its design of cities competition. He earned his Bachelor of Architecture at Virginia Tech, Master's of Architecture at Princeton University, and Doctor of Philosophy and Architecture, Texas A&M University. So we're super excited to have you here. And that, in full transparency, that was the full time I read through that. So I hope I did an okay job, but we're very glad to have you here and joining us today. And Don Rogers is joining us as well. Don started her career in the construction industry, working for the Arizona Masonry Guild and Arizona Concrete Contractors Association many years ago, and has since gone on to leadership roles in the industry, including business development, student recruiting, and retention for the construction management program at Arizona State University, and more recently, a quick foray in the world of construction technology. She has come full circle in her career and has now returned to her roots in masonry as executive director of the newly formed Arizona Masonry Council. So Don, we're super excited to have you here, and certainly happy to have you engaged in Checkoff programs. And then finally, Tony Topping. Tony serves as the executive director of the Texas Masonry Council and was a driving force behind Region 4's Texas Masonry Design Summit program. Tony has been with TMC since 2014 and brings a unique perspective, having spent 7 years working with local governments in the greater Houston area. Prior to his current role, Tony served as chief of staff for Houston City Council member Al Hoying. He earned his bachelor's in political science and master's degree in urban planning from Texas A&M University. We are so glad to have you all join us. Thank you so much. And Tony, if you are ready, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, okay?
Ready to go. Thanks, Alicia.
You bet.
Hello, everybody. Some of you know me, some of you may not. I don't even know who's on the call, so bear with us as we kind of give an overview of what we did at A&M. Let me introduce the Texas Masonry Council first. Many of you probably know about us, but if you don't, we are one of many of the regional masonry organizations around the country. We're a little bit unique in the fact that we are a combined association. We're not just brick, we're not just concrete masonry, we're not contractors. Our membership is made up of everybody. We have brick manufacturers, concrete masonry manufacturers, stone, and then, of course, the contractors that install the product. So we feel in Texas it's going well. It really, adds to the group. We feel that we have a lot of influence as a combined industry, and so it has a lot of benefits to us. We had a very long history of working heavily in the codes and standards arena. The reason I came to TMC was for as Alicia said, kind of my expertise and background in local government, where we worked on local codes and standards, really through the zoning codes and architectural standards and similar regulations to get codes adopted that benefited or encouraged the use of masonry in our local areas, in our local cities. In 2019, 2020, there was some changes in our state code that really did not allow cities to have that same type of authority to enforce some of those rules. So it forced TMC to kind of take a step back and figure out what we wanted to focus on. Many of you may be familiar with our Masonry Rocks career program that came out of that. That program started in 2020, 2021, and it's really focused on bringing masonry training, hands-on masonry training back to Texas high schools. And that's been a big success. It's an ever-expanding program. It's going well. But once that program was up and running, we were looking around saying, what's our next big initiative at TMC? And very quickly, we settled on we need to be much more active in outreach and education for architects and engineers and designers. And that's kind of how we got to this design summit. Right at the same time that the Checkoff was finally being approved after that 10-year process of getting it through Congress, the referendum was happening and the first board was was organizing in Chicago. We had already started a new committee in Texas with the goal of outreach to architects. So before the design summit ever happened or was ever really a thought, we actually had a few events. We had already started to outreach and try to do this, and honestly, it wasn't very successful. We have an annual conference in Texas of the Texas Masonry Convention. It's a 3-day event, and it culminates with a really neat event called our Texas Masonry Golden Trowels, where we give awards to architects and masons that build great projects around the state. So our idea was to the Friday, the afternoon before the event, we would host some AIA CEU sessions, and hopefully architects would come, enjoy the award ceremony, and get some of the required education. And the 2 years that we did that, the attendance was just kind of low. And we kind of said, well, why is that? The first problem was our events were kind of inconvenient to get to. They were at golf resorts and they weren't in the city, right? So the architects had to travel out to it. And so we kind of got some feedback that they just didn't want to travel out 2 hours away from, Austin or Dallas to get to the event. And it's just hard to break away from work, for just an afternoon of, 1 or 2 credits. So it was about that time we thought, we got the feedback saying, if you can make it a bigger event, get us 6 to 8 credits and make it somewhere that we really want to be at, maybe it would work better. At the same time, the Checkoff was forming, Region 4 RAC was forming, and one of our big initiatives was to put some funding into architect outreach. And so we thought, let's put a proposal together to pay for the travel for architects and engineers to come out to this event. I met with Dr. Lujan at A&M, kind of pitched the event to him, and we started planning it. So just some of the highlights of the event. Our goals were, let me share my screen here with us, and so we can see some of the goals. Some of the goals were there we go. Some of the goals were to offer up to 6 hours of AIA accredited continuing education, foster that interaction between architects, engineers, industry, and academia, and really to establish a collaborative relationship with schools of architecture in the region. I want to stop right there. There's a lot more to go over with the summit in general, but I really want to throw it to Dr. Lujan at A&M and have him talk about that connection and that relationship that we started building through this and what it meant to the university, what it meant to his students, and why I think we should all continue to do this. So, Dr. Lujan?
Sure. Thank you, Tony. And thank you, Alicia and Dawn, for helping to make this happen. First of all, what an amazing event that took place at Texas A&M this past spring. It was an opportunity strategically to connect students, faculty, industry partners, architects from all over the United States to come and not only show best practices, but more importantly, to make the we'll call the educational environment a three-dimensional textbook. We saw firsthand cutting edge practices and new metrics that are measuring carbon footprints of brick and block. We were able to hear the science side of it, not only the technical side, and also how it infused into the learning that we're doing in the classroom. So for us, it was a comprehensive event. It was social enough that we had a reception the night before where students and faculty could interact in a more social setting, more informal, not necessarily the classroom learning units style. But during the day where all the people were gathered to hear about architecture in general and then the best practices across the industry, they had moments of interaction that deepened the learning experience at every level. And then it culminated with the award ceremony, as Tony was describing later on that evening, which was a more formal event. So if you think about the two bookends, one, educationally, it infused what we are doing now in the classroom, because we took those lessons learned and translated them into the classroom today. We were able to see award-winning projects all over the United States. And this was a really great partnership with the next group in Arizona to actually showcase a tremendous amount of work that was happening there. We had architects from all over the region, Texas, that came in. These are people that are coming to our career fairs and actively engaging with our advisory council. So it became a very comprehensive interchange that now the students are learning how to apply this knowledge with hands-on experience that they typically wouldn't get. And while we might think about those as large-scale design build experiments, now they're becoming, actually, they understand the gravity of their decisions, but now they can make more informed choices when they work in their classroom and on their studio projects. And this really would not have been able to happen without this intersection. So I'm a very strong proponent of making sure that this happens across the United States. I'm very excited that University of New Mexico is going to be the next group that's going to be taking this on and championing it. I would always wanted to come back to Texas A&M because, as we know, practice is radically changing. And so anytime that we can bring those best practices into our learning environment, our students and our future leaders are actually going to be, what we're really developing. So I'm very excited about that. Tony, I don't know if you want me to go into any more detail, but it was an amazing event. I look forward to the next one, and hopefully Texas A&M can play a major role in next steps.
Yeah, no, I think that was a good summary from your perspective. One, thank you for offering to host it with us. It was that is one, we'll talk about this a little bit later about the money we spent, but it was very cost effective for us to host it at a university. There were not a lot of facility fees. You opened up the whole Department of Architecture for us to use your meeting spaces, and it was financially effective. And I think that the connection between industry and the university there was ideal. So thank you for doing that.
Well, I'll just add one other thing. It gave us an opportunity to showcase all the work that we're doing, because we were coming right out of accreditation at that time. And we were able to showcase everything that we were doing for our accrediting body. And at the same time, have detailed conversations about the masonry related projects that we were showcasing for accreditation. The students were able to learn how to do that better and more informed. And so the sidebar conversations informed all their wall sections and detailing. And so if anything, it extended the learning opportunity well beyond the summit itself.
Yeah, no, you did a good job of showing off the school. I mean, you've given me so many tours while we were there, and everybody in my industry got a personal tour from you of the facility. And I think one thing I was unprepared for, I didn't understand I wasn't prepared for how much the architects that attended were looking forward to just checking your school out, doing a campus tour, and seeing the architecture locally. They really enjoyed that, so I'm glad we chose that the location.
Well, just to build upon that, so most of what we were showing was physical in nature, but there was an entire virtual tour as well. And my highlight was Mackie walking around with the AR, VR components, walking around learning. And what we've translated now, we actually saw it at the summit. And now we're translating those learning experiences into AR experiences. We're actually designing now in AR before one brick is actually laid. We're actually designing the walls now through augmented reality and virtual reality components. And we're translating that for projects that we're doing right now for other showcases. So this was an amazing experience, not only to document where we've been, but also where the profession is going. So I thank the Texas Masonry Council for stepping up, and this entire cohort for helping to bring that to us, because I think that's the future. And I think there's a great opportunity, and I look forward to seeing how New Mexico ups the game.
Well, thank you. Like I said, thank you again for helping host it. If you have anything else you want to say as we kind of go through more of the specifics of the program, feel free to jump in.
Awesome. Well, thank you all very much. Very much appreciated.
All right, let me go through a few more specifics of the event just to kind of make it clear what we did and how we did it. The event, we really asked for funding from Checkoff to support through up to 50 architects to travel to this event. And really, we were just trying to pay them a travel stipend to help get architects from the 8-state Region 4 region area to College Station and Texas A&M University. We had 44 architects and designers sign up for it. We had 30 of them actually show up in person, and we actually found something interesting there. We were doing a lot of heavy recruiting from local architects, so we didn't really have a good idea of like, what are people going to come? We didn't want to have an event and put all this effort into it and no one show up, right? So I did a lot of recruiting from local Houston and College Station-based architects, had a bunch of them sign up. And then Dawn did a great job of getting her Arizona architects signed up to come. And we found out the people that were from out of state that booked a plane ticket and got hotel rooms, they all showed up 100% attendance. It was the local guys that had an easy out saying, oh, got lots to do at work today, or I've got a lunch meeting. We actually lost a lot of those guys. So it was the local people that, didn't show up. And so I think this kind of proves that this idea of having this region-wide event may work well, because if you get people locked in and committed to traveling, they're going to show up. So that was just an interesting thing that came out of, the attendance, who was actually there. So we ended up giving 152 hours of continuing education credits officially were documented for the various attendees. Some people didn't attend all sessions, and so we tracked that pretty closely. 100 of those were for AIA members, actually AIA CEU credits. And then the other 52 were to other people that had needed continuing education for non-AIA purposes. We had some engineers there, some landscape architects and things like that, and they were able to get their education as well. We did not end up spending, like I said, we kind of we were kind of pretty efficient with the money. We had asked for a total of $75,000 to pay for this event. The bulk of that was for travel reimbursements. As I said, we had 30 architects attending. Some of those, about half of those were local, and so the cost to send them was pretty minimal. Usually between $200 and $250. That was really just for mileage reimbursements to travel in from Houston or Austin. The cost to send somebody from Arizona, and we had an architect actually out of Missouri, I think, Don, is about $1,000, $1,250 about on average to get people from the outside part of the regions into Texas. And so we had a lot of savings on the actual travel stipends, although, we hope to up attendance next year. We'll spend all that money. But like I said, our initial estimates of how much it would cost to actually put the event on were much lower because we were able to save a lot of costs by hosting at a university. Hosting things at hotels, we do our annual convention at hotels every year, and the costs have just gone crazy. And so working with the university, we saved a lot of money on food, a ton of money on facilities, and I would highly recommend that we keep, if for no other reason, it keeps costs low. Keep costs low. So we want to keep that up. Let's see, what else should we talk over here? We did a survey of all the participants afterwards. We don't have to go through all the details of this, but I will mention we got feedback on all the different sessions, and we'll go over the sessions in a minute because I think that was a big part of the success of this event, of what we talked about. It was very interesting and informative, and a lot of new information that I think a lot of architects weren't familiar with. So overall, the surveys were good. The course 6 here had some low marks on visual presentation because we didn't make one, and I realized architects really like to see those visual presentations, so they gave us bad marks on that. I just have a picture here. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of media. We were so busy just doing things, I didn't take a lot of video and pictures of it, but this was the A&M was gracious enough to give us their big meeting room in the School of Architecture, and it was full. Like I said, we had 30 attendees there getting their CEU credits, but we also had industry there. And we'll talk a little bit about that more in a minute, but the architects and in the remarks afterwards, they really enjoyed having the complete project team there. And that's something that we want to recreate going forward. Let's just go, I want to go in now and talk about the various sessions. Don, do you have anything to add before we talk about the specific courses that we put on?
Well, I think the biggest thing is pulling a group together, a committee together, and working toward what is most relevant. This first one, we kind of threw what we thought was most relevant, and we did excellent. And now this coming for our second year, we're pulling some of the attendees, some of the principals that attended together to have a discussion and what does this look like. And I think that's a key element to bring all the different players, because now it's not just us as an association assuming, we're actually putting a program together that makes more sense. And we're only learning, we just keep learning more. I think this was wonderful. I know one of the downsides was not having as many students involved, but I think as you saw that room was packed. And I don't know how many students can be part of that. I know we had talked about that, but I think that'll come as we change things up and make things a little different, and timing of the year. I think that's a big part of it as well, when these kids are really crunched for time and when it's not. So I think it's we learned a lot. But like you saw some of this information and how excited the architects were to give the feedback and say, okay, but I want to see this and I want to see that. We could probably make a 2-week program from all the comments and suggestions. So we're excited because we have a lot to work with. But I think that, Tony, I think the first was right on, and we just keep learning and building.
Yeah, you mentioned some of the challenges, Don. I think one challenge we had, and this is really nobody's fault, we were moving forward with this idea in parallel as the RACs were getting going. And so we asked for the funding, we got it, but honestly, we were kind of behind the ball on inviting people to it, because this was a big commitment to make, to travel for 2 or 3 days out of state to get to this event. And so one thing we try to do was we actually sent like personal invite boxes out to key architects. So one thing we're doing this year is we're being much more aggressive and getting the information out and the invites out to architects that we're already working with. Anybody that we deal with within our Golden Trowel Award program, they're all aware of the upcoming event. We want to make sure that people that are already dealing with masonry or that want to deal with masonry I'm going to my contractors and saying, do you have an architect that could particularly use this event? Someone that doesn't use masonry properly or that wants to use it more, and they tell you that they don't know how to do it. And so we're being very particular and being very aggressive and going out and giving personal invites out. Just sending some emails out to the AIA listserv isn't going to get people to come travel to this event. And so that's one thing I would talk about. Get with your architects, get with your schools, get with the firms in your area, and let them know about it, and get them out there.
And we'll have a save the date postcard, visual, or an email. We'll have all of that by next week, just so you know, because we're going to get a good start running. And a lot of people like to see the agenda, but I think with our initial, like you said, Tony, those ones that were involved know that it has substance and what it looks like. And we kind of have a tentative, but we will have the save the date out. But just kind of put that out and get it in their face sooner than later, like you said, is the big item. And I think highlighting some of the differences in what the schools are, because that was a big deal, having them at these architectural schools. That was like a must. not only was it a money saver, it also just to have that collaboration with the group. So
That's a good segue. Speaking of the agenda, we can go straight into talking about some of the particular sessions that we put on, because I think that was really, I think people were impressed. And in the after interviews we got, they confirmed that they were impressed with the information that we put on. So let me share my screen again. The first one, some of you may have heard this at some point. This is the low embodied carbon presentation that Heidi Jandris has been putting on and gathering information for. And Dr. Lujan, you may jump in here too, because I think this was a lot of new information, I think, that went out to the architecture community that was really spurred some interest, I think, from you guys. Is that correct?
you'll get there.
There you go. I'm unmuted.
There he is.
Yeah, I think, well, a couple of things. You mentioned before I dive into the low carbon, we're measured now in assessment based upon how we make decisions. And so we could always just, make a decision based upon this is what I like, or this is what I want to use, but actually being able to back it with data became very important. So a value added of this session, we did have students and faculty attend the low embodied carbon session, and they were able to bring that right back into their classroom and use that data to actually align it better to what the students were actually creating in their studio. So this was, for us, it was a great learning opportunity that took real data that was coming straight from the manufacturers and third-party verification directly into the classroom. I think the other value alignment is aligning them with materials and methods courses. So while it wasn't documented in that one session, we did have a lot of students on the reception before, the night before the event, talk with the manufacturers and talk with the architects on how they were utilizing it. And I think that was a very important part that I think every university can leverage, because every accredited architecture program has the same exact criteria that they have to be able to incorporate, whether or not it's design synthesis or design integration. And all the sessions that were framed not only showed us how to, but why to, and gave us another insight to a different type of level of information that we're not going to get from any textbook, because as you're seeing here, the textbook is being created live.
Don, I thought it was interesting too. You two of your architects that came in from Arizona, they gave a kind of a keynote speech that night, and I was just so impressed with their work and what they had been working on, and their kind of knowledge of the industry. And even those two guys said, "Hey, we had no idea that this work and research on carbon was being done." And this, they were saying they used masonry for all kind of reasons, but it wasn't because of carbon, and they didn't know, they had no idea. And so it just kind of really made me realize people don't know this. My own contractors that were in the room, they said, I don't even care about carbon. One, the contractor world is different, right? They're not architects. One, they didn't care. But once they heard the presentation, they realized they should care, and that it's actually good news that we can start talking about, learning about. So,
well, in another plug, I have to say, if you haven't heard this program with Heidi puts it to a level for anybody and everybody to understand. Even if you can't grasp the concept, Heidi is an amazing presenter on this in all different levels, which is huge, I think.
Yeah. Second session was model-driven design and construction for masonry. This was a BIMS course, and a lot of the architects afterwards, they really, especially the comments we got, they really enjoyed this technical style presentation. We had, we were trying to think, and we need to get to the decision makers. We need to get to the principals in the architecture firms. That's who we kind of really wanted at this event. But we got a lot of design architects that are they're in the systems, they're in the programs, they're in BIMs, and they're in Revit, and they're the ones actually putting this stuff on paper. And they said they need more of this technical training, how to design masonry in the program. And so the whole technical track outside of this high level kind of global warming policy track, there is a need and desire for technical training of how to do a wall section of masonry within these software programs. So I thought that the comments on that was very interesting.
And
anything to add? Yeah.
Yes, and part of this, we offered this program and that as a funding mechanism, we offered this as a free year. Let us get you this into your office. And we asked them, and that to me, that was kind of a last minute, just like some of the code books and things like that. But I think knowing moving forward, these are the programs that we have available. That is an opportunity for us to take the funding from Checkoff and hand these programs over to architectural firms, engineering firms, and all of that.
Then we had a fire safety presentation. Obviously, we always want to talk about our systems and how it's fire safe. I think this should always be a part of whatever we talk about. I think the comments on this presentation were interesting too. There's so many ways and there's so much stuff in the code now about fire safety and so many different kinds of systems and sprinkler systems and special chemicals where sometimes it's even easy to overlook that concrete masonry doesn't burn to begin with. It is a passive system. You don't have to maintain it. You don't have to do anything to it. It's just not going to burn. And I think some of the comments led that way, like, you know what? Sometimes we're just making things too complex. Sometimes just build it where it doesn't burn in the first place. You don't have to worry about that sprinkler system failing. I think one of the presenter, it was Kevin Kavanaugh, one of the lines he gave was, sprinkler systems work 90% of the time. And he said, would you drive your car if your brakes worked 90% of the time? And they got a big laugh, but there's some truth to it, right? Sprinkler systems are there to keep the building fire safe. And if they have a 10% failure rate, that's probably something we should keep in mind when we're designing. Let's see, so that ends day one. Day two, this was a great presentation too. This was from Tina from TMS, code updates for concrete masonry designers. There's always updates to the code. It's kind of a boring topic, it could be, but it's a very necessary topic that people need to hear. This presentation got very high results in the surveys.
Another fantastic presenter.
Yeah,
I have to say. So she takes it to a different level.
Highly recommend and incorporate this topic, incorporate Tina into your presentations. If you're talking to architects and engineers, this is the information they need to know to get your projects designed. This presentation built off the first carbon presentation and all the research that the industry is doing and talked about kind of a real world situation, real world projects where Carbon Built is trying to convert the manufacturing process and trying to help push projects from tilt wall concrete construction over into masonry. So it was kind of a nice addition to the research style presentation that Heidi gave to this showcase some real world projects going on out there. And then finally, this was a presentation that we kind of came up with at the towards the end. This was pitched by some of my concrete some of our mason contractors in Texas. We call this our multidisciplinary panel discussion. And it was kind of put together last minute, but it went very well. So well that we've actually already recreated this twice in Texas since this design summit. And the idea with this was we wanted to get an entire project team together. We wanted the architect there. We wanted the mason contractor, the general contractor, and the built material suppliers that supply the material for a project and talk through the pros and cons, the challenges, the dilemmas, anything that could go wrong, and how to make it better, how to make sure it doesn't go wrong next time. And the feedback we got from this was really where the architects said, we love this. We don't typically have an opportunity to talk to the material manufacturer and the GC and the mason contractor about a project all at once. And so they really took to this style presentation to get feedback from the entire project team all at once.
Tony, I have to say that this was fantastic for our faculty and our students to hear as well as the local architecture community. Without that understanding that multiple voices, seeing the project from multiple vantage points, we're only going to have one answer. And this gave us an opportunity to have very different types of allied conversations.
Yeah, like I said, the comments we got from this were so overwhelmingly good that we have already recreated this at a local Austin AIA Expo. And then we did the same thing at our Texas Masonry Convention just last month, where we brought different panels. And so our idea is we will pick some of our golden trowel projects that we award every year, and we will get the project team together and travel around and give the same type of presentation to architects and engineers. and be able to talk about that design process. Everything from why the architect chose masonry in the first place, or why, what convinced them to making sure that the material suppliers know well in advance that this project is coming in the pipeline so they can make sure the material is actually ready. Making sure an architect understands what the material supplier is actually producing. Maybe what they have in their office, they don't produce that line anymore, and they need to know that. That can really mitigate problems that come up towards the end of a project when it's about to be built. So, like I said, we got knocked on the visual presentation for this because this was led by our contractors and they don't care about pictures, but the content I thought was very good, and this is something that we see going forward that we should definitely be doing. So, any questions up to this point about kind of what we did and how we did it at A&M?
Well, Tony, I have seen a few come over in regard
Okay.
to like the presentations, who the speakers are. And I think this is the whole point of this webinar right now is there's nothing that we have that is just ours. It's all, we will share all of this, the planning, what it takes and the steps that were taken, the cost of everything, the people who presented. And like I said, I mean, because there's such a broad people that are out there that can speak to so many of these items that we'll share it all. All of this is just an open book, and that's the point. We want to see this, just like Dr. Lujan said, he wants to see it throughout the US, and we're just the RAC. So we're RAC 4. So we have 8 states in here, and so that's where our funding goes. But however we can help push this to all the regions would be wonderful.
So over to you, Don. I'm going to show. So Don is in charge of hosting the next one. We mentioned a few times at University of New Mexico. I'm going to pull up the tentative agenda that she has sent me, and if you want to give a little comment on what's coming.
Just to kind of give you guys an idea, this is a tentative schedule agenda that basically I needed to work with the university with. I'm out of Arizona. The reason we were trying to do an Arizona University, we were supposed to be at U of A, and they're under accreditation, and not like Texas A&M, they're not as crazy. They decided they are not going to host this at the same time. So we deferred, so they'll be in the next few years. However, Albuquerque is a little bit easier to get to as it is, which is nicer, and they're part of RAC. So I have architects in my area that actually attended the Texas A&M, and I reached out to them and just basically brainstorm what other places, what can we see, what do we have? And some of the things that we learned really is some of the University of New Mexico architecture program is amazing. And I had no idea, right? This is all new to me, but holy cow, all the different connections. And it was really just talking to the architects within my state. You guys all know. And just like I was just talking to Dr. Lujan, he knows exactly who we're working with. And so they all know what each other have. And so we're very excited on this. A couple of the items that we did learn is the fact that they would like some kind of a hands-on and touch and feel the materials. One of the things, the reason we're doing a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, it's a little bit different here, but Friday is the only day we can get their big area for the presentation. So their auditorium, that was really the only time we can get it and have it for the full day. So we kind of changed it up a bit. They have a great under the building, a great area that we can do a hands-on program. I also reached out to one of the local architecture firms. They have somebody here in Arizona. They're huge in Texas, but Page Architecture is close to the university, has a great facility. And as of right now, we're having a discussion to have the opening reception there. So some of this stuff, we kind of changed a little bit to have the reception, I think is key. We'll probably do one also on campus. Then the educational sessions, as you see, we have no idea what they are yet. However, a big key element was to make sure we tour the schools themselves. And also they would like to have some outside tours of architecture firms that are out there. Not the firms, architectural projects. If you guys are familiar with New Mexico, Adobe is a huge thing. So some of them are like, okay, we want to see this. We also have talked about putting a block plant tour. So one of our members in our RAC 4 is a block producer out of New Mexico. So we're looking at all these different areas. Part of it is how do we make it all work? How do we make it all fit? So we're not keeping them too long. one of the things that we talked about a little bit was taking the optional tours, having an optional day. So we would pay for them to stick around if they would like to on Saturday and maybe have some of these architectural projects that are there in the state as an option. But it's really kind of just right now we're in the working mode. It took a bit to secure the date. University of New Mexico, actually they're celebrating their 50th anniversary starting in 2025. So it's kind of exciting. We're going to kind of piggyback on those celebrations with them. We're a little later in the year. I think our RAC had talked about doing it earlier. The university themselves, they said, no, I think we would get more student participation if we're going at this time. And it's really, I mean, it's working with the group. We've put a planning committee together, and that includes obviously Texas. Dr. Lujan is actually volunteered too. So I just got that, which I appreciate. So that's wonderful. And then some of the principals that were at the Texas A&M, they would like to participate. And then University of New Mexico, we have one of their grad students along with one of the professors. I also I got reached out by one of their construction management professors. So we're kind of tying them all in there. So there's a lot that we can work with, but I think that's a big deal.
I would reinforce the interdisciplinarity of it and connect into the construction science or landscape architecture. I mean, what was really amazing about many of the presentations, it wasn't just the physical building itself, it was the total environment. And I think learning from multiple vantage points, again, I think would enrich the presentation.
So we're excited. We are just beginning on this, but like Tony said, the last time we were fighting to get it out sooner than later. It just was a lot more. So next week we'll have a save the date, and then the group will start meeting and confirming all of this and get it in place. And I guess I would encourage any of you from the other regions, if you're interested, I mean, it's open. As long as we have space and we're not saying no to architects, we are open to having you come on and be part of it so you can see it, meet some of the people. It's an open door on that. We obviously won't be paying for your travel and the stipends and all of that. But if it's of interest, let us know along with those lines as well.
I agree with that last statement, Don. One of the biggest things that come out of it was that the architects really enjoyed being there with industry. My contractors would they wanted to travel and attend there. I almost told my membership contractors almost view it as bring an architect, find an architect that you work with that you want to bring to this thing, and then come with them and learn together and walk them through the process. So, yeah, I hope all you can come. If you have any questions, Alicia, I'll kind of open it up to questions now. If anybody wants to talk or have any more detailed discussion about any particular part of the event, and go from there. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
There's one other question in the chat that I don't think we've got to. How many architects can you accommodate at full capacity?
Is that a question for Don for your space this year?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
So we're limited on budget numbers, of course, right? And so I'd have to kind of go back and look at some of that. However, the space itself, they have their large auditorium and it fits about 200. So a larger space than what we were able to have at Texas A&M. So it's a little bit bigger, which will be nice, but we're also hoping to have a lot of students involved with it as well. So I don't have an actual number per se. It's a budgeting item, but thankfully Albuquerque is a little bit easier to get in and out of, I think, than if we would have been to U of A or Texas A&M. You have to either fly. I mean, it's not as, there's a lot more flights, I guess, to Albuquerque than there are to some of the other places we had looked at. So it is a budgetary item. We do have more funding for this year, and that really was hopefully to grow it, but also we're going to have a couple more the content created a little bit different. We're building on some of that, and we also have some of the tours. So you guys all know how that costs to get people in a bus and bus people places, and so we wanted to make sure all that was covered for sure.
I do think it helps. And then a follow-up to that, does it make sense for each region to write a proposal for architects from their region to attend your event, and then consider it a national event?
Certainly an interesting thought.
Yeah.
Dr. Lujan, what do you think about that? Should this be kind of 5 or 6 regional events, or should this be one large event that people look forward to coming to?
I guess it really depends upon how, like, what the type of learning that you want to have happen. Because
Yeah.
at Texas A&M, we had the opportunity to do the 350 seat auditorium,
Yeah.
but because we wanted the more classroom style to engage differently with the constituents that attended, we opted for a room that was 125. So it really depends upon what your outcomes want to be. I don't see this as being like a typical, here's a presentation and then you move on to the next session. This is really about building community and that active exchange. So it really depends upon what you want to gain from the experience. I think it means different things to different cohorts. So offering a range of intersections, I think would be, in my opinion, the most fruitful, because what you want to have this be a synoptic moment that continues well beyond the event. And the idea of bring an architect, bring a contractor, bring a friend, helps to build that capacity. But what you're really trying to do is build community. And I think that's what the whole initiative is really about.
I would agree 100%
Yeah.
on that. I think going national, it might be too much. I think the whole fact that we were able to network amongst each other and have some of that like-minded in the room, I think that's a big, I think that played a big role. I think it
I agree
absolutely
with
did.
The other part, Don, that I thought was fantastic is that you were able to showcase excellence in a different context than what the Texas architects and contractors are working with. And so that, for me, gave a lot more inspiration, because we're like, well, we could do that. Or how does that align? Or, and to Tony's point, how do we go back to the brick manufacturers and say, what can you do and how can we advance this? This is what we just saw, and it changed product lines.
I think this is a great conversation, and I do think that one thing I definitely took away from hearing Tony talk initially when we talked about this event was the community that it built and is going to continue to build. And so I know it sounds like there's a lot of interest out there, which is incredible, and I certainly would support this type of event in each region if we're not necessarily ready to take it national. And what I would say is, if you are hearing this and you like it, reach out to one of your committee members in your region. And if you need that information, I can get it to you. And you guys can write a program proposal for something like this and submit it to your RAC. And then they can consider it for a program in the upcoming funding cycle. So I'll put my name and my email in the chat, and I can connect you to the right people for that. And then obviously Tony and Don are willing to provide the blueprint to make it happen. And so that's good news. And I love that there's more interest in this, because as I've heard about it, it seems like it's very valuable. I do want to go back to, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, can I add one thing?
Absolutely.
I see Sean Rustad from Lee Building Products in Kentucky online. And after, I taught at University of Kentucky for 25 years, and this might be a really great opportunity, I think, for the local industry, the local masonry industry, to partner strategically with their schools. I love the hands-on experience, Don. I love that you're going to be doing that at this event. But this might be a way to build capacity and then showcase some of those exchanges, so that this becomes a different type of forum to share best practices working with universities. And then, as Alicia just said, that to really position that in a way to vie for the conference. I think this would be a great opportunity to continually build the capacity. But our future is our students. And so anything that we could do to build that capacity would be great.
Awesome. And I believe there was a question just more about the budgeting as well. Tony, do you want to talk through kind of high level?
I can actually bring that up and show it real quick.
Or granular level. It's fine too.
Yeah, I had to pull it up. Honestly, the budget
Let's do
was
it.
pretty simple because we were able to host it at the university. We had budgeted $45,000 for the travel stipends. That we didn't spend near that much. We spent about 18,000. Part of that is because we didn't have the full 50 architects we wanted. So just growing the amount of architects that are coming, we'll spend more of that. But the travel for the local architects was very minimal. Like I said, it was a few $100s to pay for their gas. Many of them didn't even get a hotel room because they didn't need one, and so that saved some money too. If this since this is in New Mexico this year, I really hope to bring a large contingent of Texas architects, and so we'll probably we think we'll spend more on travel stipends. Other than that, the other big expense was speaker travel and speaker fees for all the different speakers that came in. About $9,000 and $10,000 for that, and then food. We spent some money on the reception on day one and some money on lunch. But other than that, there were some minimal expenses for just materials, invitations. TMC took care of all that stuff just in our general kind of what we do during the day, as our day job. And so it was, like I said, it was cost effective because we didn't have to rent facilities. Hotel rooms were pretty cheap because it was a small college, it was a small college town, and airline tickets were not all that much coming from Phoenix from Arizona into Texas, and it was pretty cost effective overall.
Well, and speaking of that, Tony, on the hotels, one of the things that we did not do is we didn't go in and get a contract with a hotel.
Yeah.
We said, okay, these are the hotels that are in the area. We learned which ones were closer, which ones would work, and we offered it up. And so like for I said, okay, this is where I would love for you guys all to be, but that's another issue. You don't want to deal with that, right? If you don't have to get into a contract with the hotel or do stuff like that. So there's things that when you think of a conference, you think you have to do. There's a lot that you just don't. And especially like I booked all of my, I either booked their reservations for the hotel or their flights, depending on what they wanted, or I reimbursed it as they did it. So it was really, I kind of gave them all an option and let that work for whatever worked best for them. But not having a contract with a hotel, that's a big savings as well, I think.
Savings in money and savings in time, not having to deal with it.
Oh, huge. Absolutely.
Here's a list of hotels in College Station. Pick one you want.
Yep.
Very informative session. Thank you, Dr. Lujan, Tony, and Don for sharing more about this program. For our audience out there, feel free to reach out to me if you want more information, or Tony or Don directly, as they are the experts. And so I think that's all that I have for today, unless the panelists, you have anything else? No? Okay. All right, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day, and really appreciate you joining us. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good one.